Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to the senior finals of the Odisha debating uh, league. We have team 16 and team 1. Team 16 going as team proposition, team 1 going as op. Team 16 we have a team Vaishnavi, they are Shruti from same school, and then the team 1 is a dynamic team, I guess, across three different cities. And today we have panel of four judges for that. Robin as chair, Keshav, Shashant, and Sanya. We already have an introduction. They were part of earlier in round that we had today. With that, I invite Robin to take it over.
Hello everyone. We'll quickly go with introductions. This is Robin. I'll be chairing this round. I don't have any preferred pronouns. You can refer to the panel as a whole. I would like to request my panel to kindly introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, Sushant, no preferred gender pronouns, refer to the panel as a whole. All the best.
Hi everyone, Keshav this side, no preferences, all the best.
Hi everyone, Sanya this side. All the best for the debate.
Wonderful. I would like to request teams to kindly introduce themselves before they start their speeches. You can mention your preferred pronouns and also your preferred way of taking POIs. Also, I would request one member from each team to kindly write down the speaking order in the chat, as we may need that to fill the ballot. All speeches will be of 6 minutes, and we're debating on the motion. This house will use a machine which helps the minorities escape situations of discrimination through detection and warning. Without any further ado, I would like to invite the Prime Minister to open the case from side government. Here.
I'm Shruti Chalapati. I have no preferred gender pronouns. I take my POIs verbally at an allotted time during my speech, and I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. Imagine a world where we can cut off discrimination and cut off the adversity of discrimination at the root itself. This is the world Team Prop is proposing. In this debate, we are assuming that the tech is feasible, accessible, and affordable for all minorities as present. Our model is that we plan to implement this machine as follows. All cases of discrimination or harassment will be documented. For minor cases like sexist, racist, or homophobic comments, the perpetrators will be issued 3 warnings on separate occasions, after which a fine will be imposed for recurring offenses. If the offense persists after the fine, the person will have to take correctional classes and will be publicly exposed as having said and done these things. For major offenses like employment discrimination, sexual harassment, rape, etc., the perpetrators above the age of majority, for simplicity's sake above 18, will receive the punishment mandated by the laws of their countries, and their names and faces will be uploaded to a public database. And the people of the minorities that they're known to perpetrate offenses against will be warned about their presence near them for a term of 5 years after releasing from imprisonment if they are imprisoned. This arrangement will solve 2 major problems in the current judicial system. 1, the lack of reporting of offenses, and 2, the lack of objective evidence. This will further be illustrated in our subsequent arguments. Note that even if these offenses are perpetrated by privileged people and people in positions of authority or power, they will have the same consequences as the machine. That implies this system is highly objective. If a major offense is committed by a minor, their parents and guardians will be notified. The rest of the punishments will be the same, except that on attaining majority, their names will be erased from the public database unless they commit a subsequent offense. This system will also be used to track and report other crimes, for example, child labor, child abuse, etc. However, for the sake of our motion, our side will focus primarily on its benefits in situations of discrimination. Our stakeholders are women, people of caste minorities, neurodivergent people, people of racial minorities, people of religious minorities, LGBTQ people, minors, especially children in abusive households, and finally the government. We have a few definitions before I start with the points, right? 1 is situations of discrimination. We have 2 main classifications, which are minor and major offenses, as I explained in the model, which those are. And our 4 points for today is 1, principal argument, right to safety and equality; 2, prevention of crimes; 3, accountability and improvement; and 4, subjective bias and corruption of authority. The first point is right to safety and equality. When a person enters society, they are comprised under a social contract, which means they are promised safety, equality, and other fundamental rights in exchange of which they conform to the laws and rules of that society, right? While these laws exist in place in all over the country, these minorities don't get to benefit from those rights. These laws are not upheld by society or by the authorities. right? A third party, which is the machine, will help ensure protection of these minorities and protect their rights and uphold these laws and give them the protection that they deserve. Because the fact of the matter is that it is not the laws, it's not the fact that the laws don't exist, right? It's the fact that they're not being upheld by authorities, which my second speaker will actually elaborate on. Before I continue, I'll be taking a POI. Hearing none, I will move on. The second point is prevention of crimes. So many people get murdered and assaulted because of discrimination and racism. People lose their jobs, people lose their children. For example, autistic people with autism lose their entire livelihoods. They're not given control of their finances. Their children are taken away from them because they're thought to not be capable of managing such things. But this is not true at all, right? It is very clear discrimination against these people. Our machine will help prevent escalation of discrimination into such major issues. It will provide a warning before it turns into a thing where a person can get assaulted or murdered because of who they are. Right? It can also help identify microaggressions and casual discrimination, which is usually thought to be normal or something that's passed over. This will help identify these problems and help solve them before they can turn into something worse, right? Second thing is it's very hard for common people to stand up against people who discriminate. And the reason is because they're scared for their own safety and they're scared for their own jobs. In our case, the machine is the best alternative to prevent such horrible situations, as right now you have a machine standing up for you, a machine which is not scared of getting hurt as it cannot get hurt, right? So not only are we preventing something from happening, but we're actually having people in minorities get that support
POI?
that they have. Yeah, I'll take the POI.
Okay, so you spoke about people actually standing up for themselves, but don't you think that the machine will actually undermine the personal agency because individuals will rely solely on the machine to protect themselves from discrimination and will be then feel less empowered to advocate for themselves?
I think it's much better to have a machine stand up for someone and prevent their murder, prevent their assault, than not have anything do that just because they're scared of getting undermined. It's either you get undermined by a machine and have your life proper, have your job, have your children safe, or you get undermined by something that could quite literally kill you. And this is not even an exaggeration. These are cases in which it actually happens. Second of all, these people have the consent to report to the machine. They have the consent to have the machine. And so the machine isn't undermining them, it's actually helping them. Now, the third point is accountability and improvement. Why is this extremely important? One, machines give statistical information, which means they give solid evidence for these crimes, right? People who commit these crimes can be held accountable, which they aren't being held right now, right? And accountable as explained in the model. We have solid evidence against them. This helps remove the main issue, as people now will end up facing repercussion and hence people will not commit such crimes, because right now a lot of crimes are being committed because they're not being held responsible for it in this case, right? Now, what does this lead to? This leads to breaking down millions of barriers caused by discrimination. So it's not only stopping discrimination, right? It's stopping a million other things that follow that. For example, women don't go out after dark because they're scared of getting assaulted. This solves that issue, because if you're holding men for assaulting women, they will no longer do that, and women can actually go and open up their boundaries as to what they can do, right? The second way this statistical information helps is that it can help improve the state of the country, right? How is this possible? One, we can find the real issues where it hurts and create policies which are more effective as they're based on solid evidence rather than just assumptions. So now, what are the three advantages of PropSci that I've mentioned? One, ensuring the rights are protected. Two, not allowing escalation of minor crimes into major crimes that can actually hurt people. And three, solving the issue by holding people accountable and making changes based on these situations. Hence, I believe Team Prop wins this debate. Thank you.
I would like to thank the Prime Minister for a very fine speech calling upon the leader of opposition. Hear, hear.
Yes, can I get 30 seconds to gather my thoughts?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, I would like to confirm if I'm visible and audible.
Yes, you're visible and audible.
Greetings, everyone. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and I'll prefer taking the POIs verbally, so feel free to unmute yourself, and I'll take them when suitable. I will be, just a moment, I'll put up a timer for myself, and I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. Escapism, a psychological coping mechanism, is not a silver bullet solution and must be used in conjunction with other social and policy interventions to effectively address systematic discrimination. Escapism is not a solution to problems, but it does not address the root causes of the issues that we are trying to avoid. Escapism provides a temporary distraction that allows us to forget about our problems for a while. Escapism can be a useful coping mechanism in the short term. It does not help us to actually solve the problems that we are facing. In order to solve a problem, we need to confront it directly and take concrete steps to address it. Escapism is not the final solution. Simply implementing machines without policy change develops a sense of false equivalency to progress. For example, countries like China, who want to appear democratic and developed on the international stage without adhering to its principles, would have machines to monitor without bringing direct change in its policies or institutions. Our motion for the day panel is the House will use a machine which helps the minorities escape situations of discrimination through detection and warning. Now, what does this motion mean? This motion implies that a machine, a device that is designed to perform a specific task automatically with minimal human intervention, will be used to help the minorities, a group of people that are marginalized or disadvantaged in some way due to their race, ethnicity, nationality, religion, gender, etc. Right now, minorities may face discrimination or systematic barriers to access opportunities and resources that are available, and the House proposes introducing a machine to help the minorities escape and not solve the problem. Let me repeat, bold and highlighted, escape and not solve the situations of discrimination through detecting and warning the government. Now, what is a model? Panel, our model is twofold. One, discouraging the use of machine to detect and warn regarding a situation of discrimination to help the minority escape it. Two, bringing about a change to solve the problem of discriminatory situation through policy change rather than merely helping the minorities to escape them through a machine. Panel, we live in a world where discrimination continues to be a prevalent issue in the world today, affecting individuals and groups based on various factors. While progress has been made in combating discrimination in many areas, it continues to be a major issue. Now, if the government chooses to introduce machines to help the minorities escape the problems, this might not prove to be beneficial in the long run. And also, what we are offering on our side with the House is much more effective by bringing up a policy change. Now, suppose, for example, just a moment, I'll take that. The government chooses to bring about a machine. This machine would be implemented in the government institutions according to what our constitution fundamentally considers as discriminatory or non-discriminatory. In India, for instance, the LGBT community does not have marriage rights. Now, if the machine is implemented and suppose an LGBTQ couple is under a situation of discrimination, the machine still wouldn't be able to identify it. Yes, I'll take that POI.
You said that this implementation of the machine won't be feasible because escapism is a temporary solution. So suppose you are a minority community, you rather know in advance that you are going to be discriminated against and you're going to be sexually assaulted, or would you rather not know it because it's not a permanent solution, it's only a temporary solution? Which world would you prefer?
No, what I'm talking about is escapism is basically a temporary solution, but bringing about a policy change would give assurance to that person who is being afraid of being sexually assaulted, right? Being satisfied that for a temporary or a short run, that they'll not be sexually assaulted, that through the identification of machines, that is not a good solution in the long run. Now, before proceeding with our case, I would like to present a few rebuttals. Number one, let me highlight the fact that the motion defines and we go by it. Introducing machines simply helps in escapism and does not solve the root problem, which will be further covered in our arguments. Two, the world on their side is not affordable due to obvious journal reasons, and this will further be covered. Three, the world today is revolving and adapting to the idea of giving identity to the children with special needs, as mentioned by the PM, and further policy changes and identification by changes in the institution can help them. For example, a new policy that we are introducing on our side of the House, that having a quota of jobs for children with special needs and enforcing legal actions in case education is denied to them is better than a machine that would just help them escape from the problem temporarily. Panel, the opposition gladly presents its case, and for the arguments that we have on our side of the house are: number one, that limited ability to address the root cause; two, reinforces minority segregation; three, potential biases and limitation of any technological solution. So beginning with it, one, limited ability to address root causes. Now, what is the problem? Now, one, in the status quo, minority communities are discriminated against not only by the majority but also by the institutions. In Saudi Arabia, detecting and warning through a machine that the LGBTQ community is being discriminated against isn't the solution to the problem. The solution is to create better institutions and policies to protect their lives. Two, in fact, countries like Saudi Arabia might not want to implement these machines only. Now, what are the reasons for the problem? Now, one, most governments and constitutions are biased towards minorities. For example, being Hindu in Pakistan, LGBT in Saudi Arabia, Muslim in China, etc. Two, in these cases, if the machines are imposed without changing the existing policies, it would be created with a view that aligns to the government. That is, the machine would still not be able to detect or warn that something wrong is happening. Three, therefore, the rights of the people we want to protect will continue to be exploited. Now, why is this problem important? Even if the machines work effectively, it is only able to help minorities escape from that situation. It never provides a solution to solve that problem. The government, even after receiving the warnings and detection, would be complacent to their rights if there's no provision to policies to protect them. Therefore, the way to approach and solve the root cause for discrimination has to be outside the existing system. To solve the problems of discrimination, we need to ensure that the government bodies and institutions are revolutionized. That is why this is the only way, and that is why the opposition wins this debate. Thank you.
I would like to thank the leader of opposition for a very fine speech, calling upon the Deputy Prime Minister. Hear, hear.
I'm the Deputy Prime Minister, and I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Imagine a world where you, a victim of rape, sexual assault, or any other form of discrimination, finally gather and muster the courage to report your traumatic past incident, only to be further discriminated against by those very same people whose duty it was to protect you. How would you feel in that scenario? I'll be starting with a few points of rebuttal. They asked through a POI how the machines would undermine our agency of the victims because they would indiscriminately and compulsorily report any and every act of discrimination. However, this is not true, as we mentioned before. The victims always have the choice whether or not they want to report the incident. The only thing that separates our world from your world is that there is conclusive and factual, unbiased information that the machine seeks, which can hasten the lawmaking, which can hasten the judicial proceedings, and which can hasten the entire proceedings as a whole. It's not going to undermine anyone's agencies because the part of consent is mutual to both sides of the house. Then their entire case revolves around escapism, and how escapism is not a solution. It's only a short-term solution, and it doesn't solve the problem in entirety. It only proposes an escape from reality. Firstly, minorities are the most vulnerable stakeholders of the debate, and they are the major stakeholder of the debate, right? How can you go and tell a minority community that no, it's fine until a policy has been implemented, we will continue going on with status quo when there is another existent technology? You cannot go ahead and say, this is just this technology will give you only short-term solutions and not long-term solutions. And so we do not want the technology as a whole. Our side, you have acknowledged that our side has short-term benefits. So we're saying that even if it has short-term benefits, it must be provided because it has the potential to reduce the rate of crime, to reduce the rate of assault, to reduce the rate of rape, and to reduce the rate of discrimination. All of these are very severe major offenses. If it has the opportunity to reduce all of that, it should be continued. And you yourself consider that we have several short-term benefits. We believe that these short-term benefits can eventually translate into long-term benefits, as how my first speaker had already elaborated. And we believe that simply by saying that it has only shorter benefits is not reasonable grounds to void the entire technology as a whole. Then their alternative to our case is that policies would be implemented to solve this problem, which would be a more long-term solution as opposed to technology, which is a short-term solution. I already rebutted this in the previous rebuttal, but I'd like to further address this on 3 levels. Firstly, there are already several existing policies to protect minorities, to protect women, to protect so many people who are vulnerable right now, right? But have they been completely effective? Of course not. No policy or no scheme ever would be completely effective. And on this, secondly, and more importantly, just because our world has the implementation of machine and has the implementation of technology, that doesn't mean that there won't be governmental policies or there won't be government schemes, right? Our machines are just going to be a further asset, a further boon to people to help them in case they need them. Our world is just going to provide further pros, and it is up to the minorities whether they want to opt for them. And it's not reasonable grounds to reject it for the entire minority by saying that it only helps them in the short term, right? That's not reasonable enough. There will be governmental schemes that happen side by side, but all we are saying is that it's unfair to deprive minority communities from this useful piece of technology simply by saying that it has only short-term benefits. Then thirdly, how many lives is side opposition willing to sacrifice until the time where a reasonable governmental scheme is implemented? How many lives are you all willing to sacrifice until you come up with a perfect plan? Because the fact of the matter is that there's never going to be a perfect policy, there's never going to be a perfect scheme, and even if there is, there are never going to be people who are objective enough to implement them, which is exactly why your entire alternative will not function, because it's based on a utopian society. And the fact of the matter is that humans are subject to their inherent cognitive biases, which is my entire argument, which I will be elaborating on right now. So moving on to my argument, which is subjective bias and corruption in authority. To understand this debate, we must first understand the context in which it takes place. Let's take India as an example. Even though the crime rate is so high in India and rampant to the degree that it's normalized and almost ubiquitous to society, the number of reports in India are relatively low, and this occurs due to two reasons. Number one, the victims are blamed / discriminated against / neglected by authorities. And number two, the authorities actively assault and harass the victims. Now, the primary reason behind why this happens is because human beings are inherently biased and are incapable of working objectively all the time. Due to this, people in a position of power, like police officers or any other law enforcing agency for that matter, tend to discriminate against certain sections of society purely because of their intrinsic cognitive bias, right? This is all the more true in remote villages and underdeveloped areas where authorities tend to pander to the upper class and the richer sections of society. Additionally, the issue of corruption through bribery comes into play because when humans are involved, a large number of perpetrators get to walk away scot-free because they're able to pay off their crime, they're able to bribe the officials, and because the officials are inherently corrupt and have a greed for money. This world of side opposition washes away the sins of the criminals with the notes of the rich, and it defies the very purpose of an egalitarian society. Another dimension that needs to be considered is that when a victim reports anything to human authorities and not a machine authority, victim blaming and victim shaming occurs. It is a fact of the matter that in a preponderance of cases where victims go to report cases of discrimination, including sexual assault, they are bombarded with irrelevant questions like their attire at the time, what time it was, and in whose company they were at the time of the assault. It doesn't just end there. They are further blamed for the assault and are victim blamed through no fault of their own. All of this occurs due to the subjective bias in human beings, which inhibits victims from reporting the incidents. This is the sad state of affairs on side opposition's world, whereas in our world, the objective machine reporting the incidents would eliminate the element of bias, would eliminate the abdication of the guilty, and would eliminate the prospects of a dystopian world. To surmise, we've proven to you as to how Cops World reduces the accountability of victims because of the cognitive bias in authorities. We've proven to you as to how our world reduces the prospects of bribery, corruption, and cognitive bias because of the machine's objective algorithm. And we've also proven to you as to how our world would increase the trust among the victims to report incidents and therefore further better the judicial system. And this is why I believe we take this debate.
I would like to thank the DPM for a very fine speech calling upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Good afternoon. I'm Navya Sheth, and I'm going to be the Deputy Leader of Opposition. My personal pronouns are she and her, and I will be taking the POIs verbally. So feel free to unmute yourself. I will also be timing myself. We will start in 3, 2, 1. Technology is a marvel of creation, but also a tool of discrimination. Unconscious bias is baked in, a flaw that's hard to pin. We must strive for inclusion and not a tech that might have an exclusion. I will first be tackling the rebuttals. So the previous speaker mentioned about how short-term benefits will get transferred to long-term benefits. But does the speaker and does proposition as all understand that developing and implementing such a machine would be expensive, as we already mentioned before? And there may be many more cost-effective ways to address discrimination in society. Considering the status quo consists of minority communities, how viable is the access to this machine? Understanding their inability to acquire the most basic of resources. Proposition might say government grants, but governments and organizations have limited resources. and they must prioritize where to invest those resources to achieve the greatest impact. There may be more cost-effective ways to address discrimination in a society, such as investing in education and awareness programs, improving access to legal support and representation, or implementing policies and regulations to prevent discrimination. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., a civil rights legend in the 1950s, also tried to end segregation and counter prejudice in the United States through the means of a peaceful protest and did not have a machine back then. It is also important to consider that the potential ROI, return on investment of such a machine, while the goal of technology is to help minorities escape the situations of discrimination, it is unclear whether the machine would be effective in achieving this goal. Without a clear understanding of the ROI, it may be difficult to justify the cost of developing and implementing such a machine. Well, now moving to my constructives. The idea that the use of the machine is to detect and warn about discrimination would be seen as a form of segregation based on the fact that the machine would be specifically targeting minorities for monitoring and protection. And as the previous speaker said, it further discriminates. No, it doesn't. Here it is further discriminating. This could be interpreted by some as a way of reinforcing the idea that minorities are different from the rest of the society and need to be monitored and protected in a special way. This has the potential to further entrench with discriminatory attitudes and behaviors because it reinforces the idea that there is a clear separation between the majority and minority groups in the society. This could lead to a situation where discrimination is seen as acceptable or even encouraged by some members of the majority group, as they may see the monitoring and protection of minorities as something that reinforces their own sense of superiority. Additionally, the use of such a machine could lead to a sense of alienation among minorities, as they may feel singled out and stigmatized by the use of this technology. This could further entrench the status as other in the society and make it more difficult for them to fully participate in the society as equals. Overall, while the use of machines to detect and warn about discrimination may be well intentioned, it is important to consider that the potential unintended consequences, such as reinforcing segregation and entrenching discriminatory attitudes and behaviors, is equally toxic and it could be detrimental. It would be important to ensure that any such technology is designed and implemented in a way that promotes inclusivity and equality rather than reinforcing existing societal divisions. And this moves me to my next argument. The proposition talks about eliminating bias, subjective human bias, but it is also important to consider the potential bias and limitations of any technological solution. There is also the risk of false alarms, that the machines maybe identify behavior as discriminatory when it is not. And this could be a big mistake. This could result in unnecessary interventions or warnings, which could be harmful to both the individuals involved and the overall trust in the system. The use of a machine for discrimination detection raises concerns around privacy and surveillance. Individuals may be hesitant to use the system if they feel that their actions are being constantly monitored or recorded, which could limit its effectiveness. A machine designed to detect and warn about discrimination could be misused by authorities to target individuals or groups for surveillance or persecution. This again rebuttals another point that we mentioned before. This could have serious implications for civil rights, liberties, and human rights. Here we are violating the principle of human rights. Then comes in data bias. AI algorithms are only as good as the data they are trained on. If the data used to train the algorithm is biased or incomplete, then the algorithm may perpetuate the bias. For example, if an AI algorithm is trained on historical data that reflects biased decision making, then the algorithm may learn to make decisions based on those biases. AI algorithms are not always able to take into account the full context of the situation. Discrimination is often a complex and nuanced issue that involves multiple factors, and an algorithm may not take into account all of these factors. For example, the machine you propose may not be effective in all situations or may inadvertently reinforce existing biases if not properly trained or redesigned. Not only that, but it will also create that false dichotomy between victims and perpetrators. The use of a machine to detect and warn about discrimination may create that false dichotomy between victims and perpetrators and may prevent individuals from recognizing their own complicity in perpetuating discriminatory behaviors and attitudes. And this would actually hinder that meaningful progress towards greater equity and inclusion and could perpetuate harmful power dynamics in the society. Any POIs?
Yeah, I have a question.
It's predicted time actually.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So I rest my case there, proud to oppose and to be on the winning side. Thank you.
I would like to thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for a very fine speech calling upon government whip. Here, here.
Could I just have 30 seconds to get my points together before I start?
Yeah, all good.
I just like to confirm that I'm visible and audible, right?
Oh, yes, you're visible and audible.
I'll let you know in my speech when I'm taking a POI. You can put it in the chat if you want to, but don't interrupt me verbally. I will tell you. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, put yourself in the place of a young working woman. One day you have to stay late at work so you can complete a project and you have to get a taxi or a bus to go home. Would you or would you not rather know if your driver is a past sexual predator? Inside opposition's world, there would be almost no way of knowing if the person who possibly quite literally holds your life and your liberty and your dignity in their hands is going to harm you in any way. In our world, as we have illustrated, as my speakers have illustrated, you would have enough prior warning to protect yourself. Our world is a world in which it is safe for women, for people of color, for people of religious minorities, for neurodivergent people, in short, for all people to live in with no fear of being targeted. Because unlike in opposition's world, privileged perpetrators are not allowed to get away with their offenses scot-free. Now, I want to make one comparative between their best case scenario and our worst case scenario. Their best case scenario is that some possible future policy change is going to be implemented, which will stop people from being harmed. But until then, in the present, until maybe 10, 20 years when the law finally gets passed, these people can still be getting hurt because the current system is flawed, which they have not disputed, because obviously it's true. The system is flawed. People are still being harmed. Our worst case scenario, as they have said, is that a machine which can be upgraded, which can be retrained using better data, which can fix its own mistakes, makes a mistake which can be rectified. But the people who it's currently protecting are still protected. I'll be moving on with a few points of rebuttal before I move on to my main clashes. Now, their first speaker came up and told us that we are not tackling the problems because policies are not changed. Now, as my second speaker mentioned, policies already exist to protect these people. People are still harmed. What policies are they proposing to change? They haven't told us anything about this. It's already illegal to rape people, to racially profile people, to discriminate against people based on caste, etc. The existence of this machine doesn't mean that policy change is never going to happen. For example, if this machine was implemented before, say, homosexuality was legalized, that doesn't mean that never in the future is homosexuality going to be legalized. Or if this machine was implemented now, it doesn't mean that homosexual marriage is never going to be legalized in the future. What it does mean is that, say, something that's already illegal, say caste-based discrimination, race-based discrimination, lesbians being profiled for being lesbians and being attacked violently or assaulted on the streets, all of those things will be reported despite victims being afraid to report. Now, their second speaker mentioned that technology can be discriminatory, which I already said. Technology can be retrained by adding more data, which is obviously going to happen because, again, we are assuming that this machine exists. We are assuming that this technology exists. Secondly, they said that making the machine would be too difficult, that it might be too costly for the government to do. Assuming that the tech exists, which is, again, the point of this motion. But even if we didn't, if the government has the money to do everything that this machine can do, to track down perpetrators, to find out possible victims, to find out the names and faces of these perpetrators, to warn all of the victims, all of this manually using people, it would still cost a lot more than to allow an AI-based algorithmic machine to do it, than if you were trying to hire enough people to actually protect all of these people individually, which is why the machine would be a lot more effective. They also said that minorities shouldn't be protected because they might feel othered. Now, let me ask you a question. As a minority, would you rather be racially profiled by the police than protected, even if it means you feeling slightly othered from society at the time? Because personally, I would. Now, coming to our main clashes. The first clash is whether or not we should prioritize the right to life and safety of minorities and on which side the minorities are benefited. Now, side opposition presents no benefits to minorities. They say, oh, we might have long-term benefits. We might do policy change in the future. We might change things that will help these minorities. They don't give us any concrete reform. On our side, we have told you that no matter what, a person's right to life and to safety must always come first, including the right to be alive, to live without being harassed and discriminated against. And that you have a social contract when you come into this world. You are owed safety, you are owed protection by existing, so long as you don't harm other people. Now, a lot of offenses go unreported despite being illegal because victims are threatened by their perpetrators. If you report me raping you, says a man, then I will kill you. This happens. The thing is, this machine is not going, if you are a rapist and you rape a woman, this machine is not going to get killed by the man, right? The machine will report the offense regardless. However, the victims will remain anonymous, which is why it's going to be a lot more effective on our side. Our side impacts a lot more stakeholders in a positive way, which is why I believe we won this clash. POI? Anyone?
Yes, I have a POI.
Go ahead.
Okay, you mentioned about adding data, but are you aware about the fact that majority of the systems are typically trained on large data sets that reflect the majority culture? So what about that then? Because again, the minority are going to be
if you're saying that algorithms are trained based on majorities, now a majority of Dalits in India are discriminated against. That is a majority within a minority, right? So the algorithm will be trained to say that Dalits are probably going to be discriminated against, that high caste people, because might probably be discriminating against the Dalits. Therefore, if a discriminatory high caste person goes near a Dalit in a threatening manner, then maybe that Dalit is going to be harmed, which is why the authorities will be alerted. Also, if you listen to our model, what happens is the machine is monitoring people who have committed past offenses and people who are likely to commit future offenses, which means that if the offense starts taking place, if someone threatens someone, if someone threatens to assault someone, if someone starts assaulting someone, the authorities will be immediately alerted. However, in a world where it is up to the victim to report, what happens is if you get raped, you have to finish getting raped. Hopefully you don't get killed. And only then can you go tell the police. And on top of that, the police might discriminate against you, as our second speaker said. In this world, if a man starts approaching a woman, or if someone starts approaching someone in a threatening manner, in a sexually threatening manner, the authorities will automatically be alerted. So the crime can even be prevented. Now, coming to which side reduces bias and corruption. Side op has not tackled corruption in authorities like at all. Our second speaker told you that since the machine is implementing this objectively, it can't be bribed by the rich, privileged, powerful people who might get away with these offenses, which is why corruption in privileged positions is probably going to be done away with. And which side benefits minorities more, which is our last clash. Sorry, okay, thank you.
I would like to thank the government whip speaker for a very fine speech, calling upon opposition whip to be the last speech of this round. Here.
Yes, Judge. Could I please get 30 seconds to summarize my thoughts?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thank you. Yes, I'm the opposition whip. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and I'll be taking POIs verbally. So please feel free to unmute and ask for a POI. I'll be starting in 3, 2, and 1. Panel, we believe that proposition hasn't fundamentally understood where this debate is occurring, right? Because note that the developed and the underdeveloped and the developing countries and parts of the world wouldn't accept the sort of machines that they are proposing in the first place itself, because the laws and the constitution of their countries doesn't agree to the sort of rights and discrimination that they want to be proposing. While if they truly want to be focusing on the developed countries, that certainly wouldn't be possible, because these countries want to develop machines that benefit their point of view and propose their laws. This probably looks like the USA implementing machines, but still, if a Black woman in California is being discriminated for having aborted, then still that machine wouldn't be able to take any action or report this very offense to the government, right? Therefore, there are 3 fundamental clashes in this debate. Number 1 is the implementation of props machine effective, right? Panel, let's note that their DPM boldly proposed that if there is a new technology that has been created, that has to be implemented for the protection of minorities. Note that in the 1990s, this was the implementation of CCTVs. In the 2010s, this was the implementation of reporting through mobile phones, and now probably it is through the implementation of the AI systems that they are proposing, right? Always note that it is an extension of the existing policies and laws that they have, and therefore the biases that continue to exist in these laws perpetuate, right? That is, there is nothing new that is being done to protect the rights of minorities and to prevent them from being discriminated. They say that the current policies are ineffective and the government policies would never be perfect, right? But understand that the model that we as opposition are proposing is outside of the existing systems that we have. That is a revolution to overthrow the existing systems so that you have proper policies in place that support the rights and the rights that are being given to these minorities. Adding machines is simply an extension to the current ineffective systems is what we are trying to say, right? So what this means, so this brings me to my next clash. That is, where do we create a better world for minorities? That is to say, on their side of the world, it's probably only a machine that is going to exist. We already told you about how many countries would not be willing to accept this sort of a machinery because of their existing constitutional laws, right? But let's imagine their side of the world where countries do accept it. And we already told you about how the sort of reporting that would occur would still be biased. And then they talk about so this directly turns down their entire clash about how probably there would be more censorship and more reporting, right? What this then means is that if the constitution and the legislation and the institutions by its fundamental system are corrupt, even if these machines exist and they find out all of these solid evidences, there would still be corruption in the backside, where even if this is being reported, the authorities would continue to be biased because they are the ones who would continue to take decisions. The police would still be biased towards acting on ground, and probably still the people in power, the people with more money and influence, would be able to turn down this case, right? Which is to then say that no matter how much of technology you continue to develop, until you have a revolutionary system that we are proposing outside of the existing systems, you can never stop the discrimination against minorities. What you are proposing is simply an escapism towards the existing models and to is simply a model of escapism, while what we are trying to focus is a proper permanent solution to completely turn down all of the injustices that is being that are diverted towards minorities. And lastly, about the trade-off, right? They talk about an immediate solution where probably there is lesser, where there would be more reporting, and probably there would be an immediate recognition of the injustices that are done against minorities. While we've already told you about how this reporting would be biased, right? But let's compare that. Now, all of the benefits that they are proposing, that is, there would be immediate reporting, there would be the parents would be the parents would be known about it, the internet would be informed, and all of it still exists in the current form of systems where probably police and the CCTVs are able to analyze the different injustices that are being done, which is to say all of it that they are trying to propose still exists in the status quo, but yet you see all of these discriminations that are happening against these women, right? That is to say, even if the reporting is being done, it is never in favor of these minorities. So therefore, all of the benefits that they are proposing is not exclusive to them, and it exists in the status quo. But let's imagine the harms that they bring about with their implementation of policies, right? Which is to say, a false equivalency would be created, that simply because now I have implemented an AI system, I wouldn't bring about a policy change because now I know that I can trust upon it. So therefore, the true justice that we are seeking for minorities would never be attained, right? As compared to our side of the house, where we are proposing a solution outside of the system. It is not simply an extension of escapism, as they are saying, right? Which then means that even if certain women or racial minorities or religious minorities are being discriminated against present, we are okay with it because the same benefits that they are presenting is being done by the existing model of bureaucracy, police, and the constitutional laws that we have, as compared to the long-term benefits that we are giving you with bringing about changes outside of the revolutionary systems. So therefore, panel, we've told you about how implementing props machine isn't effective. We've told you that we create a better world for minorities by bringing about changes outside of the system, and we told you that that the trade-off that they are imposing is invalid, and our stance takes an upper hand over there. With that, opposition is proud to conclude its case, but not its stance. Thank you.
I would like to thank the opposition whip speaker for a very fine speech. With that, we come to the end of this wonderful debate. Both teams can cross their hands virtually. So now the judges and I will be going to the deliberation room, and then I think we'll see you at the closing ceremony.